forbearance. We are now ready to recommence the Planning Applications Committee meeting for December. When we lost transmission, as it were, we had just heard from one objectors, Mr. Weston. So I'm now going to invite the second objector, Mrs. Beverly Terrell, to speak. Mrs. Terrell, are you there?
I am, thank you.
Excellent. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening. We support the officer's recommendation, but feel the first reason for refusal should be omitted, as it fails to acknowledge that over half the site falls within flood zone 2. Even the current proposal for 2 houses is unable to meet the minimum access, servicing, parking, and tree protection requirements. It is also requested that the decision notice cite additional reasons for refusal. 1. The proposal is contrary to policy DMO 1, as it fails to clearly demonstrate that this designated space is surplus to requirements. The open space assessment that was submitted is wholly inadequate and relies solely on the findings of the draft open space study and the draft Merton plan. As confirmed in the officer's report, paragraph 7.7, these documents are to be afforded limited weight as they are in the early stage of adoption. Therefore, accepting the principle of buildings on the designated open space without a clear demonstration of it being surplus is premature and would undermine the policy which seeks to protect all open space in the borough. Number 2, failure to provide adequate on-site parking and demonstrate that the vehicles can enter and leave the site in forward gear. The proposal notes that 2 to 3 spaces could be accommodated between the houses and the northern boundary. This gap is only 1.2 meters wide, whereas a parking space needs 2.4. The forecourt area is noted as being able to provide 2 to 3 spaces, but there is no detailed parking layout with tracking to demonstrate that these spaces have a 6-meter clearance and can allow turning on site. In addition, there is a protected tree in the corner of the proposed parking area that would be at risk of damage. 3, failure to provide an on-site holding area with clear views along the access drive. The applicant does not have access rights over the nursery school's wider parking area, and as such has no safe area for the residents' cars to wait if this access is in use by children or parents. This holding bay was deemed essential for the nursery school permission to be granted, and yet this application scheme does not provide one. The proposed use of the shared access drive without a holding bay and clear visibility would prejudice the careful managed and safe use of the access by the nursery school children and parents. 4, failure to provide adequate access to the site. The officer's report states that the previous reason for refusal has been addressed by the former Scouts widening of the access drive. Whilst the access drive has been widened, the applicant does not have any legal right over the private strip of land alongside the former narrow access drive. Therefore, should any future application be granted, it would not be able to achieve adequate access without agreement from a third party entering a section 106. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Terrell. We now hear from the applicant who has 6 minutes to speak. That's Mr. Colin Tan and Mr. Alec Dutton. Who would like to speak first? Mr. Tan or Mr. Dutton?
I'm Colin, and I'll speak first.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. I'm Colin Tan. Thanks very much, first of all, to the council, to Jordan, to Fisher Merton for all of your help so far. And the gist of Jordan's current analysis is we should build more houses, be more efficient in our use of the space. I thought I would just take this opportunity to introduce myself because I know who you are. So, like, first of all, I'm a very normal human being. I'm not a developer. We came to own this land a couple of years ago, and we just moved to Merton actually from Manchester during lockdown. So we've been Manchester all these years. We'll come down every once in a year during summer, camp there, and cut the grass. The land was in a terrible shape when we first came to own it. It was overgrown. It was a fire hazard. There was an abandoned truck there. It still is, and the nursery site as well is a site of dumping. This was worse during lockdown. People break in, and I think you saw the photographs there. Just security is not very good in that area. But we have removed the truck, tried to, like I said, get out reduce the risk of fire hazards, and we try to do everything in a very low impact way for all these years, using hand tools, and, very unnoisy grass cutters. We love nature very much. I'm sorry that objectives may feel otherwise. Yeah, we love nature, so we love seeing the birds. And originally, in fact, we had only planned for one house just for my family to move here. We did a pre-app last year. Jordan suggested we do 2 houses. And so hence this application, there are 2 houses there. One is a granny flat, you see, what's a granny house? But just to let you know, we have, and my architect, Alex, will speak next, make plans for actually 3 more houses on the right side. And the reason we didn't want to do this, we didn't want to appear aggressive. First of all, it was urban space. This actually is not in early stages. It's been submitted to Secretary of State now. One of the objectives, the second objective said. So, and Merton's been working on this for a long time, about 4 years. We've been part of this process of open space assessment and analysis. I think that's it. 2 other things. Yes, we will provide a tree impact report or assessment. And we have already found a private waste management solution. I think so in total, there could be maybe 6, maybe 4 or 5 more on the right, on the eastern side of the land. That's all I have to say here, except maybe last few things. I have some professional competence in project management and real estate development.
3 minutes.
In my day job, thank you. In my day job, I work for Science Pub.
Thank you, Mr. Tan.
Thank you.
Mr. Dutton, would you like to speak now, please? You have 3 minutes.
Yes. Good evening. Hello, good evening. Yeah, I'm Alex Dutton, and I represent Accommodation and also Snug Homes on this project, working for Colin. As a bit of background, we are 2 small businesses, not big developers at all, that have we've evolved out of the self-build movement, and we are working towards creating new solutions that provide better ecological homes with resident and community involvement and that truly address climate change. Part of what we do is design and build net zero carbon offsite homes, and we completed our award-winning Snug Home pilot project earlier this year in Bristol. The Cannon Hill Lane project is hopefully the first of our next homes. It has therefore been disappointing to us that we've not gained the support of the local authority, and that after 5 months of patiently waiting for material feedback and offers from us to provide any information to assist in resolving any concerns that may arise, the application has been expedited to committee without a process of working together to see if these concerns can be addressed prior to going to committee. We had hoped to be given a little further time to provide the necessary information, as the 3 reasons for refusal that have been stated can be readily addressed and without any changes to the current plans. The first reason for refusal is the efficient use of land, the main one, and the 2 homes applied for do not prevent future development. And we have issued the planning officer with a plan demonstrating how this can occur. We had offered this material earlier in the planning process before it was confirmed as a material issue in the draft report, so we don't understand why this was not taken up before the planning report was actually written. However, local sensitivity and flood zone issues rendered including this within the original application a risk, as Colin has stated. Regarding the trees, the footprints of the homes are located outside the root protection areas, the RPAs, of all trees. A small area of footpath and parking area overlaps 1 RPA to the front of the proposed larger home, but this is less than 20% of the area and with a suitable technical detail will not impact upon the health of the tree. Nevertheless, the arboricultural impact assessment has been requested, and we had confirmed to the planning officer before the report was written that this can be provided. On the final point of waste, The draft Merton SPD of the development of small sites states that if the guidance on the drag distance cannot be met, private waste management is required. It is confirmed to the planning officer that the applicant would be happy to arrange that, which Colin has also just done. So we don't understand why this couldn't be a condition of approval. Finally, we are a small organisation with very limited means and feel this is potentially a missed opportunity to resolve this application expediently for all parties. Reasons 2 and 3 can be readily addressed with the provision of some additional information as conditions to a planning consent. The first reason does not require alteration to the current plans, and a separate application could be drawn up for the additional homes as an outline or a detailed application moving forward separately. This would allow the first 2 homes to proceed whilst the remainder of the site progressed through the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dutton. Now it's for the ward councillors to speak. Councillor Kenny, would you like to speak for 3 minutes, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Sally Kenny, the councillor for Lower Morden, and the Cannon Hill area we're talking about comes in my ward, and I'm here on behalf of the residents of Cannon Hill and the Forest Nursery School. I've made a site visit and seen the area that's proposed to have the build on in the open space. Entrance to the area is 3 metres wide, and as the previous speaker mentioned, part of it was installed by the Forest Nursery School, which in fact is theirs and no one else's access. The area is narrow, and I just don't see how that access road would enable vehicles of the size needed to access a building site to get through. It would be a ongoing difficult access for deliveries, resources to be delivered, for waste vehicles to collect the rubbish, or quite a distance for people to wheel their rubbish out, which would have to go onto the pavement. Forest Nursery School has children accessing twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon because of their split sessions. The children's health and safety is vital, as all children's health and safety is. Nearby schools are part of the school street scheme, and where either end of the school day an hour is restricted access to support the health and safety of those children. As the Forest School has a varied arrival time and departure time, it would really fall into the area if it needed to be regarded as a school street, which would make access difficult for any other vehicles to the new site. The Forest School would have the healthy outdoor approach severely affected by the construction of the living activities that would be needed to be built on. And forest schools are growing in popularity. More and more parents are appealing to this type of education for their preschool children. There's a large, beautiful tree that would prevent easy access, and any vehicle that's coming up the access road and turning right to get to the new build, if they occurred, would be going over the roots of the tree and perhaps doing endless damage. Also, with the building of a 2-storey house, the fences at the back are at about 6 feet high, the maximum amount allowed. But once people were upstairs in any new build, they would see into everyone's garden, and there's a great deal of privacy would be removed. There's also the issue of the green carbon neutral area, which would be reduced considerably by the reduction of the vegetation in the local area. The local people and the Forest School community have got together to say they really do not consider this is in their interest, in their safety, in their quality of life. And I think that it's not a suitable area to build where it is impinging on a forest school and a considerable amount of local residents. And I would have thought it's much more appropriate to look for brown sites in Merton instead of bringing on a protected open space site at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Mr. Alexander, are there any comments you would like to make on the basis of what we've heard so far?
There's probably a couple. I think one of them is just dealing with confusion. So the application is not about loss of open space. They're not proposing to change the designation of the open space because they can't do that. It's about building on open space. And I think I've tried to kind of articulate the policies as much as possible within my page. So that's about building on open space, and it says it should not be built on unless one, an assessment has been undertaken which clearly shows the open space building or land to be surplus to requirement. And as I said, the background to that is that the council's already commissioned, this was last year, a green space infrastructure report that finds and concludes that the site is surplus to requirement and does not meet criteria for being open space anymore. The findings for that, of course, have been reviewed, they've been brought in, and they're now part of the council's local plan. So the new local plan that's being say that there's no material considerations about the fact that the site is surplus to requirement. I think is wrong, because obviously we've got our own studies that the council's commissioned. That would say otherwise, is that the landowner has a right of access over the site. And as I said before, at the moment they're only proposing to put 2 houses on site, so 2 to 3 cars created from development, and it wasn't considered to have kind of any material impact on the highway or that access way. What else do I have? In terms of building on the site and trying to get access into the site by construction vehicles, if we were to put scheme forward for recommendation, of course there's things that we can put in place. So we can put conditions in place for construction management plans, construction logistic plans, things like noise and dust management plans as well, to try and facilitate and ensure that construction takes place in kind of an appropriate way. I think there were some kind of comments by the applicant itself about why the council can't kind of consider or take in new material. I think one of the things that's important is when you get a planning application, that all material comes to you in one piece, because when it comes to you, that's the application that gets submitted, and that needs to go out to consultation to neighbours. I think when you start getting kind of dribbled information in bit by bit, it means that every piece needs to be reconsulted with neighbours again. It confuses the process completely, and your whole application just gets really, really cumbersome. So it's always important for any applicant to just provide all the information up front that we need. It's not then we can't assess the application based on what's submitted originally. I think it's pretty unfair to be be trying to push stuff across late in the game. You really need to get it all in at one point for us to assess. That's all.
Thank you, Jordan. We now move to questions from members of the committee. Councillor Alan Breestis.
Yeah, this is a very interesting application. Here we have the applicant wanting to build 2 houses, the officer recommending refusal because the optimal solution isn't there. And so my question is, if not 2 houses, how many is the officer looking for? Thank you.
Yeah, so we don't have any
I
numbers.
think if I might just say that it's not really up to officers or the council to suggest what would be a suitable build. It's really up to the developer to put a proposal to us. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jordan.
No, that's exactly right. And maybe that only 2 houses are appropriate. And that's the maximum that they can get on the site while using it efficiently. But unless we see those options in front of us and there's a narrative that's there to show you how they've explored kind of the consideration about providing a design-led approach, then that's a number that, because at the moment we just don't know. It hasn't been demonstrated either that 2 houses are appropriate or more could be put on the site. We just don't know that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dean.
So current law, guidelines, rules are that this is designated open space. And the last time there's been 2 planning applications, both rejected. And that's because the officers wrote that the proposed development would be harmful to an important ecological natural habitat, resulting in the loss of protected woodland area and likely harm to protected oak trees to the detriment of the open character of the locality. So they are the current rules or guidelines or laws, whatever the council wish to call them. So are the council saying that this should be rejected on that basis because they're the rules that they follow?
No, the rules that are in place is our current plan, which is 2014, and it's DM01 is the policy. So that looks at it and says, well, you can potentially build on open space if that land is clearly cited and acknowledged as being surplus to requirement. And as I said, there's been a green infrastructure study done and commissioned by the council. And the text within that is in paragraph 2.5 of my report. I can read that out, but you can probably read it for yourself. And that's the findings that were done. And it's clearly stating that this land is surplus to requirement. It should be removed from the designation as the findings. And those findings have been used and adopted, have been used in terms of supporting the council's evidence base for removing the site from the local plan, from the new local plan that's being brought forward for examination to the planning inspectorate. So this is the information that's at play at the moment in terms of the most up-to-date information about kind of the status of that land and whether it should be open space or not.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of what I was going to ask has been sort of put to you by Councillor Kenny, but there are 2 more problems I foresee here in the actual construction. Unless I missed it in the text, there's no mention of how you can get waste off a site in a wheelie bin. What about human waste? How is that going to be transmitted from that proposed house to the sewer out in the main road? I think unless I missed it, there is no answer to that question. Services are hard enough, and as I know from 54 years of experience, when the resident and his fellow residents are cooperating and allowing things to happen that they wouldn't normally tolerate. But I think also that any construction on this site, there is no real answer to all the materials to build 2 dwellings or 2 constructions are going to get in and out, because I can't see a gang of people carrying all this stuff in and out, and it will be unloaded on the road, on the pavement, and it will have to be carried in. And I think that there are no answers to this in the text from the applicant.
Thank you. Jordan, do you want to comment on that?
No, not particularly. I'm not sure if you've got anything to say about it, Jonathan. I think you're probably...
Chair, in answer to the questions raised by Councillor Pearce, the Part H of the building regulations covers drainage and waste disposal. So that's approved document H of the building regulations. So given that there's a piece of statutory legislation which can be enforced under the building regulations to ensure that this is dealt with satisfactorily, whilst it may be concerned in terms of the wider construction project, it's something where there's a separate piece of legislation that deals with this, and it may be unreasonable as the local planning authority dealing with the planning application to resist it on something which is covered under a separate piece of legislation.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any other questions? So we move on to comments then. Would any councillor like to comment? Councillor Southgate.
Thank you, Chair. If I could refer to para 5.8, the planning officer's comments, the local open space designation can only be removed through an updated local plan. We do not have an updated local plan. The draft plan has yet to have a planning inspector appointed for the examination in public stage. So we are a long way from an approved local plan. Frankly, all the rest of this discussion has been premature. And I just think we should be, going by the current plan and rejecting it on those grounds, that it's not a designated open, that it is, sorry, the designation has not been changed from its current open space.
Thank you. Councillor Pitts. Japer, sorry.
Yes, Chair, I'd agree entirely with what Councillor Southgate's just said. It's green space. It's mightily abused green space. We know that. It's maybe not the best green space we've got, but it is green space. And as a council, we've spent a very large amount of time and effort protecting every inch of green space that we have. I mean, for instance, in Dundonald Park and the leisure centre in Morden Park, we've done some really hard work on this, and I'm not confident that allowing this piece of land to be developed would have the blessing of the council. And my thinking is that given the local feeling on the subject, the changing of its designation should really be consulted on at councillor level at least before deciding what to build on it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think we should now move to the vote. The recommendation of the officers is for, right. I'm just discussing with Mr. Lewis the significance of the Merton local plan, its status at the moment, because it's past consultation. But as Councillor Southgate pointed out, it hasn't yet been referred to a planning inspector for examination. So it kind of complicates the recommendation that we're going to consider shortly.
I've suggested to the chair that the manner in which any reason for refusal is worded in this instance needs to be handled quite sensitively. Listening to the debate, the concerns have focused primarily on the loss of the open space. And as a matter of fact, at this moment in time, the designation of the land is as open space. However, the council corporately has taken a view that the draft local plan is sufficiently robust to be put before a government inspector, and irrespective of whether or not the government inspector then rules on that land as being suitable to be kept in or out of its open space designation, the applicant is entitled to the consistent application of decision making in terms of the broader issues associated with town planning. So if the government inspector says, I think that the land should be kept in, that's one thing. But at the moment, if the Planning Applications Committee takes the view that development on this land for housing is inappropriate, that then runs counter to the corporate position that Merton Council has adopted for the purposes of putting the draft local plan before a government inspector. And you can see there that if you were a developer, you'd be saying, well, the planning committee is saying one thing, but Merton Council as a body is saying something different. And all I'm suggesting at the moment is the way in which, if the will of the members is to refuse this proposal, then I would suggest at the moment it would be good to get a broader feel of the concerns of members to help officers fashion a suitable reason for refusal. Because with all these things, in the event of an appeal, what I wouldn't wish to do was expose the council to an application for costs.
I'll take Councillor Alan Bretis,
Yes.
then Councillor Christie.
Sorry, Chair, we were about to take the vote on recommendation, refuse permission for the following reasons, 1, 2, 3, which is what the officers have recommended. We were about to take the vote on those 3 items. The fact that we've had a discussion about other things is neither here nor there. We were about to take the refusal to agree with officers on those 3 items. We're not suggesting that we reword the refusal. There was just some comments, that's all. Thank you.
Councillor Christie, then Councillor Quilliam.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I absolutely agree with Councillor Alan Bretis, and I'm quite happy to put on record that I do agree with the officer's reason for refusal. I've heard, obviously, some of the concerns raised by the objectors, and particularly eloquently from Councillor Kenny. But I do feel if we are moving towards a local plan that is looking to say that this particular site is suitable for development, then, to me, in all likelihood, we're gonna reach that point. And so if we are going to make a decision that this particular plot of land is suitable for development, then I would want it to be used to its maximum effectiveness. So I'm quite happy to support the officer's reasons for refusal.
Councillor Quilliam.
I'd just like to agree with Councillor Christie and Councillor Alan Bretis, and I'd sort of add to what Councillor Christie said, that my impression from officers wasn't necessarily that there would have to be lots more homes in another application. It's just that it would have to be demonstrated that it's the best use of land. And I think from my perspective, that's I very much support that, and will be supporting officer recommendations.
Thank you, colleagues. Councillor Southgate.
Well, yes, Mr. Lewis's sophistry has exposed, has it not, the clash of interest here between the residents, points Councillor Kenny makes about the current use of the site, which is in fact to, I think, avoid development altogether, and the recommendation, which in fact is to intensify the scale of development against that proposed by the applicant. Now, I think we're about to resolve that, but if it is, by virtue of in effect, and frankly forward running the local plan when it comes into effect, I have reservations about supporting that, but let it be. Let's take the vote as per the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Southgate. I think we will move to the vote now. The recommendation is for refusal on the grounds given on page 25 of the officer's report. All those in favour of the recommendation to refuse? All those against? All those not voting? So that is 7 in favour of refusal and 1 not voting. So the application is refused. Thank you. We now move on to item 6 on the agenda, number 18, Clifton Road. Mr. Bryson, are you presenting on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Please go ahead.
Hopefully you all can see my screen and the plans. Members, the application site is at 18 Clifton Road in Wimbledon Village. The site comprises a large detached, what is now a single dwelling house. It used to be 4 flats. Members may recognise the site as it did come before Planning Committee in the summer. The proposal itself is a householder application for home extensions to the dwelling. The proposal comprises a new front porch, single-storey rear extension, and replacement outbuilding here, and also landscaping, and also some dormer windows within the roof space. So going through the site plan, the porch here, replacement outbuilding here, which is replacing some old garages that used to be there, which is single story extension here. There's an existing basement, just doing some internal works within the existing footprint. The elevations of the proposal, as I say, it's a rather tall, large house. Sorry, there are some front boundary works as well, iron railings and brick piers at the front. This is proposed northwest elevation. So proposed is the dormer windows in the roof here. The single-story extension is here. Proposed rear elevation, single-story extension here. New garden building here, and the dormer windows in the roof here. And then turning the other side as well. Proposed landscaping. Proposal includes some formal landscaping works down the side here with new pathway. The garden is later lawn currently. Proposal does include some tree retention highlighted in red along the boundaries. The site has been subject to tree works application previously, which removed a number of trees in the bottom of the garden here. And also the previous planning permission to conversion of the house, the 4 flats to 1 house, included tree removal at the front. The in and out driveway was the same as that previously approved under the previous application, but this application now has the details of the front boundary treatment. This is some site pictures. So currently sealed off for construction work purposes. It has a semi basement, as you can see here. Has an old side access here, which used to go to the garages at the back of the site. Now the site has a somewhat unusual relationship with the neighbouring property number 20, which is this property here, in that this property is on the boundary and therefore has windows immediately into this site at ground floor and first floor here and here. So looking back, so the proposed single-story extension largely comes just above this band of bricks here, coming out. Really just showing some pictures further back within the plot. The outbuilding proposed would be here. There's trees to be retained on the left-hand side here. That tree is to be retained. And really just further back within the garden, looking back at the house. There's a care home to the east, which is set further back in the building line. And a neighbouring garden beyond with a outdoor tool shed here. And that's from the front looking down the side with those trees also to be retained. Members, overall, extensions to the building, officers are satisfied with the scale, form and design of the extensions to the building, and overall recommend permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one objector speaking on this, Mr. Tony Thorne. Are you in the chamber? Oh, I can see you. Excellent. You press the little silver button underneath the yellow button.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Tony Thorne, and I own that little white house that you could see almost bang up against the number 18 Clifton Road. The so-called single-story extension, in fact, involves a brick wall which would be 5 meters high. That's 16 feet high, and it's just less than 3 meters from my home. I have, as you probably saw in that picture, 2 windows on that side of my house, only 2 windows. The reduction of light into my house is quite devastating. This feature was not shown on the plans that were displayed on the website on which neighbours were invited to comment. It was added surreptitiously after the deadline for comment, including several other features which have caused objections. We weren't advised of these changes. I just noticed the complete alteration of this application when I happened to look at the website after the deadline for comment. I informed the other neighbours, they also were completely unaware. As soon as I discovered what I consider to be a catastrophic impact on the light of my house, I asked that an inspector would come and look from my point of view and see what the damage would be. Nobody came. I asked again and again. Nobody came. Eventually, I was told that the planning officer was going to visit the site on a particular day, and I said, please, can he come into my house and look from my point of view? It was refused. I asked for any reason why the planning officer would not come and look from my point of view. I didn't get an answer. Mr. Chairman, I believe that the developer is required to produce a daylight sunlight assessment. No such document has been produced. I would like to request that this application be deferred until an outside professional independent surveyor has carried out a daylight sunlight assessment to evaluate the amount of damage to our amenity. In total, we've noted 7 separate instances where the planning department seems to have broken its own rules. As you may know, one of these has already been referred to the local government ombudsman, not by me, but by a neighbour who is outraged at the totally irregular permit that was given to remove 40-year-old healthy trees at the bottom of the garden at the request of the developer. Mr. Chairman, I would love to have an opportunity to show you the details of a series of the other seemingly irregular proposals in this application, but in 3 minutes, I understand I don't have the time. What I would like to do is say, please, could we have a daylight sunlight assessment by an independent surveyor? Failing that, I would
I'm
invite.
going to have to stop you now. Your 3 minutes is up. It's now a 3 minutes opportunity for the applicant to respond. Mr. Latter, are you here?
Yes.
Excellent. You have 3 minutes to respond.
Can I take
please.
this mask off?
Yes, you can, may.
Evening, councillors. I'm the project architect speaking on behalf of the client, sitting to my right. Just to give you a little bit of background, the client bought the property about 5 months ago with the extant approval for 4:1, with the view of obviously remodelling and reappropriating the house for her growing family with 3 children. And as you can see from the proposal, the landscape and the layout informs that. Both ourselves, being a long-standing architect in Wimbledon Village, with the client, are committed to making the best of this property and really reinstating a home which has been hidden by a large screen of trees for many years. Obviously, the first instance was to remove the trees, clear the site, see what we have. And in removing these large trees at the front boundary has actually opened up the southern light to number 20 Clifton Road, greatly improving their outlook and amenity. This is a north-facing extension, so I think a daylight sunlight study isn't really appropriate. I don't think there's much more I can add. I think the report covers off a lot of the items, and that's all I can really say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bryson, would you like to comment on anything we've heard so far?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to daylight sunlight reports, we don't usually get them for home extension proposals. The officer has done a site visit, and we look closely at that relationship with those 2, in particular, side-facing ground floor windows. We have set out the assessment within the report in terms of the impact on amenity, and we also have to be mindful of it is a somewhat unusual relationship in that the light is gathered purely from the neighbouring, purely from the application side itself. It's an access way. A car, for example, could be parked in front of those windows, and on balance, given the distance that the extension is 3 meters beyond from those windows and drawing on the same building line, on balance, officers are happy with the proposal in that regard. With regards to tree removal, there has been a tree works application that was submitted during the summer, which was assessed by the council's tree officer, separate from the planning applications process. But what the application does for this site now, it does include tree retention, and also additional trees are proposed to be planted to create formal gardens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We now move on to questions from committee members. Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Chair. So, for my clarity, the gentleman's property, the window, currently, does that look out directly into what would be the garden of the application site? Is that what it looks like at the moment?
Chair, it's best to share my screen, I think, to show the site photographs. Hopefully you can see. So members, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So the two ground floor windows here do look out onto the the side access currently.
And is that is that a shared rear garden, or is it the rear garden of the application property?
It's the rear garden of the application site.
Councillor Alan-Beatus and then Councillor Southgate.
The photo there, is that property, the white property, is that an extension or was that always there?
Categorically, I can't confirm, but it would appear to be an old property, which I believe would be original. Sometimes with old properties, as they divvied up over time, these things happen. I believe at one point it may have been associated with the application site, but categorically, I can't 100% confirm that, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Southgate.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just for Councillor Alan-Beatus, the report says the property was originally a garage converted to former house in 1949. My question is, and as I read this para 711, those two windows serve a kitchen, and the question is, would you class that as a habitable room?
Tim, do you want to comment on whether a kitchen is deemed to be a habitable room or not?
Chair, it normally isn't. A lot of it depends on how the property is used and the size. This kitchen does have a dining room to the south of it, which adjoins it, and another living space beyond. So the neighbouring property, primary outlook is to the front. So we wouldn't categorically say this is a habitable space for the house, as it does have a dining room linking it to the south, which does have windows facing south.
Right, just to be clear, there are other windows serving the kitchen dining unit. No. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Move on to comments then. Councillor Alan-Beatus.
Yes, I'm puzzled as to why we have to look at these applications by people who've moved into the borough, want to invest in their property, want to improve on it, want to extend it, and I, for one, would be all for this improvement. Having heard that the white building was at one stage a garage, I'm sorry about the loss of light that may ensue, but we really do need to move on and not take umpteen hours over one house extensions in Wimbledon. I really do like the look of it, and I think we should approve this.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Yes, I'm on the same subject. I would tend to think that it isn't the applicant's fault that the White House is built on the boundary line, as been said. I don't think that would actually, you can't use retrospect, but it's not, if it's built on the boundary line, that shouldn't, one of those shouldn't be used to inhibit the next door neighbour. And as much as I sympathise with a lack of light, basically you're punishing the applicant for what a circumstance that he had no control of, and probably would not in the near past been allowed to be built anyway.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll move to the vote then. The recommendation for officers is to approve subject to conditions as set out in paragraph 9. All those in favour, please. All those against? All those not voting? So that is 6 in favour, none against, and 2 not voting. So the officer's recommendation is approved. Thank you. We move on now to item 8 on the original agenda, Wimbledon College, Edge Hill. Mr. Bryson, I think that's you again to present, is it not?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Members, the site is Wimbledon College at its, oh, sorry, there we go. Apologies, Chair, bear with me. Sorry, Chair. The site's at Wimbledon College at the Edge Hill campus. So within Wimbledon, the proposal itself is a application for a new 3G pitch, which is an AstroTurf for football and rugby purposes. The current site comprises a playing field at the moment for the college. The proposed AstroTurf would be for rugby and football purposes. The application also includes a 5-metre high perimeter fence and 6 floodlights, which at full length would be 15 metres, but would be retractable to no higher than 5 metres when not in use. The existing topography of the site is such that it slopes down from northwest to southeast. So there's a slight sloping gradient, which you can see from some pictures later on. This is the proposed layout plan. So as outlined in AstroTurf, the outline in purple would be the 5-metre high fence. There are existing cricket nets with some hard standing, which would not be altered as part of this. They would remain as is, and the proposal set away from them. The dark green around the edge is later grass, and the artificial is obviously in the middle and at the top here. The floodlight columns would be 3 on each side, as outlined, 15 metres high at maximum height, and then retracted down to less than 5 metres. Here's a elevation plan. So the green mesh fencing, as you can see, the floodlight details here. We have conditioned to secure further floodlighting details. The site is in a conservation area, and officers recommend that condition to secure further details should permission be granted. The floodlights, in terms of light spillage, obviously the floodlights are directed towards the pitch. A reasonable distance is maintained to the site boundaries. The nearest neighbouring occupiers in terms of residential are here on Thackeray Close to the southeast. But overall, the pitch would largely remain in the centre as per the existing playing pitch. Although there would be a cut and fill to make the playing pitch for more level, there would still be a very slight sloping gradient with lay of the land. But the main steep drop in gradient would be further towards the school buildings as the pitch is cut in. In terms of trees, the application doesn't require or propose tree removal. The trees are largely surrounding the edge of the site, as the scheme just replaces an existing heavily used sports playing pitch. And proposed drainage, the pitch would be permeable to formal drainage system proposed. The council's flood risk officer has reviewed the amended drainage plan and is now happy. However, you'll note in the recommendation that he's recommended we consult Thames Water to ensure that they have no concerns with the proposal. This is an aerial photograph submitted with the application, just showing the pitch. So as you can see, rugby posts here and here, heavily used. The cricket nets are referred to here and here. And just looking further down, Google 3D map, really just capturing sports hall and some residential properties to the southeast. On the ground, on the left-hand side is the school buildings. And so with this photograph, you can really see there's a slight rising gradient across the site. And as outlined, the pitch would be here and laid in with natural grass banking up to make up for the levels. The buildings on the school site are grade 2 listed, and there is also a grade 2 style listed church to the southeast. Overall, Chair, officers are happy that the proposal would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and not cause harm to any heritage assets. You'll note that we have recommended that the conditions in there so that the floodlights are retractable when not in use, and this would assist with the visual impact of the scheme. So overall, officer recommendation permission granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. We have 2 objectors to this application. The first person to speak will be Mr. Paul Connor. You will have 3 minutes. Mr. Connor, are you here? Please speak.
My property is on the eastern boundary of the college. Representation submitted highlighted 18 different grounds for objection. That's 18. To cite a commercial operation in the middle of a mainly residential conservation area makes a mockery of the term conservation area. It proposes the loss of approximately 6,000 square meters of green space and its total replacement with steel, concrete, and plastic. TfL rate the surrounding area as of poor public transport accessibilities, and with the church, scouts, swimming club, and local schools, congestion and parking is already an issue. The commercial operation was initially costed at $2 million in 2020 and will likely cost considerably more. Given the budget arrangement between the school and the council, taxpayer money will be spent on this project. Therefore, as there appears to be no business plan, council auditors should undertake a financial risk assessment and feasibility study to make sure that not 1 cent of council tax money is at risk in this project. No environmental impact assessment is deemed necessary, and the council conservation officer has raised no objection. How can the building over of 1.5 acres of grassland have no environmental impact, especially on the bats, the stag beetles, and the birds in the area? A full environmental report should have been prepared before this application had even been lodged. The revised drainage report states in section 6.5 that a full drainage survey has not been done. The pitch will drain into local residential drains, and Thames Water have not yet confirmed the acceptability of this. So without the recommended drainage survey and Thames Water approval, how can this application even be considered? The proposed hours include evenings, weekends, and school holidays, meaning that crowd and participant noise will be audible up to 6.5 days every week with minimal respite for residents. The average signal whistle can be heard half a mile away. Without the called for noise impact assessment, including the impact on neighbouring streets and individual properties, this application is incomplete. The 6 15-metre high lighting towers proposed are over 4 stories high and taller than all of the surrounding residential buildings. The hinged light towers proposed are not retractable and each requires manual skilled intervention to lower them. This could take up to 45 minutes and most likely would not happen, and the towers would become a permanent feature, whether on or off. It's hard to understand how a proposal that raises 18 different grounds for objection makes it to the stage. National Planning Policy Framework and the Council's own policies clearly indicate that a higher level of due diligence and a comprehensive examination of all 18 grounds for objection be undertaken. Conservation area principles of preserving and enhancing existing character have not been adequately considered. Still of major concern are the financial, ecological, drainage, noise, traffic, lighting, maintenance and administration facilities, and local impact. And these alone should raise enough red flags for this proposal to be rejected. A project of this size requires considerably wider consultation with local residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connor. The next objector to speak is Mr. Colin Patterson. Mr. Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on that consultation point, there has in fact been consultation with a number of adjoining properties, but the problem is that these light gantries are so tall that they emerge above all the surrounding properties, which means that quite a number of additional properties have these gantries or would have these gantries in direct line of sight, my house included in Thornton Road. So I have not been consulted about this, and many other properties that will be similarly affected have not been consulted. Some properties might be partially screened by trees, it is suggested, but of course that would not occur in winter when the lights would be used most often. With regard to the floodlights themselves, I was pleased to hear that there is more work to be done in relation to what these lights actually are. We've not been told what they are, so we can't test their suitability, we can't test whether there would be light spillage. And in particular, I think that we should have proper glare calculations as recommended by the Institute of Lighting Professionals. Now, there are some conflicts with Merton Council's stating planning policies. These policies will be very familiar to councillors, but with respect, I'm going to repeat some of them. For example, to quote, within a conservation area, a proposal will be required to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of that area, unquote. Clearly, the construction of 6 15-metre lighting gantries with a total of 8 floodlights would achieve the exact opposite. And it seems very possible that light pollution affecting some properties could amount to a nuisance in law. Again, proposals will be expected to ensure that the level of traffic, parking or noise would not detract from the character or appearance of the area. But this is already a crowded area. Extra traffic could only detract from character and appearance. We have no estimates of this, or even guesstimates. Of particular concern, of course, is the likely considerable extra noise from extended use of the pitch. The change in the duration of noise, as Mr. Connor has mentioned, would be particularly dramatic, going from none in the evening to several hours most evenings of the week, with the weekends as well. Again, to quote, the council will normally resist proposals for high structures which have an impact on conservation areas. Well, these pylons would certainly have an impact, including an impact on the listed grade 2-star Sacred Heart Church already mentioned. We can imagine perhaps at evening mass, the sight of the gantry lights through the church windows. Again, all new buildings should be designed to ensure that adjoining property is protected from visual intrusion, noise, and disturbance. We have intrusion, we have noise, we have disturbance. The council is committed to conserving and enhancing the borough's biodiversity. How is that achieved? By covering a large area with an artificial surface and bathing it in thousands of watts of light. In summary, these proposals are totally unsuitable for a conservation area, and we urge you to reject them.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. It is now the applicant's turn to respond to the objector's concerns. First person to speak is Mr. Adrian Lang, who I believe is on Zoom. Mr. Lang.
Good evening, Chair. I am indeed Steve on Zoom. Could I just ask politely, in the documentation we received yesterday around speaking, there was no suggestion that it would be 3 minutes and 3 minutes, and it was suggested that time could be split as we saw fit. I just wanted to see clarification on that.
Yes, that is correct. You can divide the 6 minutes between the two of you as you see fit. How long would you like to speak for, Mr. Lang?
I will speak for the predominance of the time, if that is okay, Chair.
Okay, speak for the predominance of the time. Whatever is left, Mr. Knowles can speak.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to say first and foremost that the primary purpose for us as a school for the 3G pitch is actually to enhance the sports facilities for the pupils of the school. We are a comprehensive school and the pupils come from the borough of Merton and further afield. The field, as you probably saw in those photographs, there is a 2-metre slope across the field, and due to the regular daily use by boys, is in a state of quite serious degradation. The intention of the 3G pitch is to provide a surface that can be used throughout the year for the pupils, and they do use the field on site regularly for PE lessons. We do have games fields off site, but the journey time to those fields prohibits the PE lessons taking place on those. And so the playing surface for the school is very important to the boys, to their physical education and well-being. In addition to that, of course, we have put in the application the opportunity to hire the pitch from a period of 6 till 9 in the evening during the week, and 9 till 6 on a Saturday, 9 till 1 on a Sunday as the maximum periods of time. In terms of the flood lighting, the lighting will indeed be pneumatic telescopic lighting, and we will provide greater planning details as requested to the planning authorities, and they will retract down to 5 metres when not in use. They obviously will raise to the height needed for the lighting. And the reason the lighting is that high is to reduce light spillage from going beyond the site. On page 153 of the documentation, there is a diagram of the Lux loadings, and there is minimal light spillage beyond the boundaries of the school site. The pylons themselves, I believe, are approximately 18 metres from the school boundary, and not immediately adjacent to the church building, as was suggested in some of the objections. And indeed, there is the church hall between the Sacred Heart Church and the school grounds. So the actual church is a significant distance away from the field and the lighting.
Mr. Lang, is it possible to speak a bit louder, please? Because
Sorry, beg your pardon. Yes, I can.
Good.
Thank you. Beg your pardon for that. So I was saying that the pylons are approximately 18 metres away from our boundary edge, and there is a church hall between the Sacred Heart Church, which is the listed building, and the playing fields themselves. The lighting system is a focused lighting system with a purposely reduced spillage light from the actual playing area. So where the tree area is would have minimal light on it, and beyond our boundaries also. Our drainage system that has been revised is also a very thorough system, which will improve what is really poor drainage on the field at the moment. The pitch gets waterlogged, becomes unusable in the winter time. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're looking to the proposal of the 3G pitch, which would enable the pupils to continue using it all through the year. There were other concerns around the recycling of the playing surface at the end of life, and that there is provision there for that to be removed securely to recycling unit, where the vast majority of the material is reused within the construction of further new surface, and the plastics that cannot be used is recycled into plastic furniture and the like. So there is a significant degree of recycling of those materials. We do have full and adequate changing facilities and toilet facilities on site. We are a school, and the playing field is adjacent to our sports hall, and we'll have access to those for any lessons that we were to have. And with regard to traffic, we have parking facilities on site, so there wouldn't be a significant increase in need for parking on the roads around the school. The size of the playing field would limit the number of participants, and we have sufficient capacity for parking on site. There are bus routes that do serve the school on the Ridgeway and also Walpole Road, and they function and run throughout the evening and the weekends as well. So the purpose of the field, as I say, is to improve and enhance the sporting facilities that we do have at the school, primarily for the benefit of the pupils. I query the planning permission was put in 2020 at the cost of £2 million, because I have no recollection of that, and I don't believe there was such a
1 minute remaining.
Permission put in. So I will finish that point and just request that the consideration for the education and the physical welfare of the pupils is the primary reason for the playing field to be converted into a 3D pitch. Mr. Knowles, is there anything you would like to add? Mr. Knowles?
Mr. Knowles, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
A bit muffled. Can you speak up, please?
Yeah, sorry. Is that better?
No,
Can you
you're
hear me?
still rather muffled.
Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to finish?
Yes. If am I still muffled now?
Yeah, a bit louder, please.
Yeah, I am speaking quite loud, so I think maybe my microphone isn't picking me up very well. Can you not hear me?
No, we can't.
Okay. Adrian, could you finish?
If I may just take over. I mean, I think a couple of the things that Mr. Knowles was going to say was that we do actually have a drainage survey, and I believe that has been presented to the planners, and also the light drawings, which are on page 153, give a sense of how there will be minimal light spillage from the site into the neighbouring area, and indeed into the tree area on our own site. I think they are the two main points that we're going to raise. But thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. I now believe that Councillor Holden would like to speak. Councillor Holden, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, colleagues, and good evening. I'm here tonight to side with the residents against this application. Opposing school applications is not something I do or like doing, but given that it's for the children. But schools are situated in a neighbourhood within residential communities, and so we need schemes that do not cause harm to neighbours. The application site sits within the Wimbledon West Conservation Area, and so higher standards should apply. Problem here is the 6 overly tall 15-metre floodlights. These will cause light pollution, cause harm to local wildlife and ecology, and be detrimental to the neighbouring residents. The late hours of operation also cause problems in that noise will extend out of the playing area into the adjoining homes. Up to 9 PM is too late. The extended hours of operation that are being planned will cause a dramatic increase in the vehicular traffic in Edgehill and Darlaston Road. These are ordinarily quiet roads, which this application seeks to turn into a major roads with frequent vehicles and coaches accessing the site. Though trip generation is not your usual typical planning reason for refusal, I think in this case it is. Also noise. Sports are very noisy and it carries more at night than it does in the day. This will therefore cause distress and harm to not just the adjoining residents, but those even further down the hill. We're also concerned by the likely increase in flooding. We've already seen this low down the hill on Walpole Road and the surrounding roads, and this is in large part caused by developments like this and others at the top of the hill. The application does not sufficiently safeguard against this increased runoff, and residents who lie immediately downhill and adjacent are concerned by this. We need exemplary sustainable drainage, and I don't believe this scheme has it. I think the scheme ought to be refused on the grounds of policy DMF1 and DMF2. I also think not enough consideration has been given to traffic problems. I've stood on Edgehill many times and seen the problem with school-based traffic. So I think you should refuse also on policy DMT1, T2 and T3. Or finally, you could refuse simply because the harm the scheme will cause to neighbours, which is the general planning policy DMD2. So I encourage you to refuse the application tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. Mr. Bryson, would you like to comment on what we've just heard?
If I may, Chair, thank you. Yes, a number of issues raised. One thing was raised was with regard to the funding behind this, but that is not a material planning consideration for this evening for a planning application. The drainage scheme has been agreed by our in-house expert, our flood risk officer. So we're happy with the drainage proposal. In terms of noise from the pitch, it is an existing sports field, and so there is already noise generation from the use. The proposed use would be the same, and so.
Hold on a moment, please, Tim.
Let's wait for the evidence first. But I would like to listen to the officer, not someone else.
Thank you, Councillor Dean. I think we should actually be silent when the officer is reporting to us, so please bear that in mind, members. Thank you. Tim, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just regards to the use of the pitch, primarily for the school, we have put on a condition before any commercial use to be taking place for a noise report and any mitigation measures therein recommended by an environmental health officer. And regard to the height of the structures, yes, 15 metres when in use. However, they would be retracted to no higher than 5 metres, and 5 metres is the height of the proposed fence surround. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. So we move to questions. Councillor Dean and Councillor Alan Brittis.
Coming up. Here we go. Right. 3 questions to the officers. Have at any stage the school come to officers and said that the current pitch has meant that they've had any sports postponed? The second question is, do the school currently play on that pitch to 9 p.m. at night? And the third question is what's the current designation for this open space? Is it green space? Is it sports fields? What is it?
Thank you, Chair. No, I believe the school haven't approached us in the planning department in terms of whether any matches have been actually postponed from the state of the existing pitch. 9 p.m. at night use, there wouldn't be anything to restrict the school from using it at 9 p.m. Obviously, it is limited by the daylight hours. Perhaps in the summer, it could be used limitedly up to 9 p.m. In terms of its designation, it is open. I believe it is open space within our current local plan. But if you bear with me, Chair, I can perhaps double confirm that. Thank you. Yes, Chair, that it is designated open space under our local plan policies map.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Brittis.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, Chair. My understanding is that the school moved to its current site in 1893 and has been playing sports for the kids ever since with houses around it. Is that Mr. Bryson's understanding? That it's been there on that site since 1893? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know the exact date that they've been there, but I understand, given the age of the listed buildings, I presume they have been there a long time, and that pitch has been there a long time in existence.
Councillor Dean and Councillor Councillor Japer. So I don't know why I keep confusing the two of you. Councillor Dean and Councillor Japer.
So I'm assuming since 1893 to 2021, the schools had no problems with sports. So can I ask a similar question? Did the council receive information from the school that since 1893, they haven't been able to play sports on this pitch?
I can't confirm that, Chair, I'm afraid. No.
Councillor Japer.
Thanks. Given that, yeah, it's actually about the metropolitan open space. Was the council right or wrong to install muggers, you know, the artificial pitches on its own public open space? Was it entitled to do so?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't quite catch that. Is that in regard to not to this site?
I'm expecting an answer yes here. Is one allowed to put artificial turf onto public open space?
Yes, Chair. So open space policy allows for recreation, outdoor recreation. So yes, so this site as open space is acceptable in principal use.
Thank you very much.
As there appear to be no other questions, I'll move on to comments. Councillor Dean, Councillor Alan Peters, Councillor Pearce.
So
Councillor Christie.
it's quite clear that the school have no problem playing sports on this field. I'm assuming a number of people have played football and rugby on that field, some of them since 1893, I imagine. And I think the challenge here, of course, is this isn't about the school and this isn't about sports. This is all about commercialising their ground. Because if they've been able to play on it for 128 years without any complaints, and it wasn't part of their submission that they had a problem playing on there, to lose 1.5 acres of grass, environmentally alive areas, to put in a dead surface, plastic, artificial, and floodlights, so they can play up to 9 p.m. I'm absolutely sure that they only play football and rugby in the months where it's very dark, way before 9 p.m. So this is about commercializing their pitch. This isn't about playing football and rugby for the school children. And to desecrate 1.5 acres of green space, and I recognize that not everybody understands the huge benefits of soil and grass, etc. To desecrate that just for a commercial outfit, which there isn't a business plan, which the school has no experience at all in running, I think is absolutely wrong. And to put a 5-meter bright green fence next to listed buildings, which I hasten to add, the school have very close to their own heart, that particular building, is quite amazing, I think. And I don't think the school should be seen as a commercial operation and desecrate the environment and desecrate the conservation area and desecrate a listed building next to it. This is pure greed of people who don't know anything about running a commercial operation. They really need to go back to teaching pupils and educating them and allowing the environment to survive in this borough, because they are destroying the environment in this borough, and anybody who votes for this is destroying the environment in this borough. So I say that we reject this. This is pure commercial gain, and it's to the detriment of the pupils themselves, the school, the area, and this council.
Alan Bootis.
Thank you. Can I first thank the head teacher for taking the time to be here to speak to his own application. Thank him for the job he does, for the work he does in this borough, teaching thousands of children over the years, at that school since 1893. I'm shocked at some of the statements by Councillor Dean accusing the school of being over commercial. Shocking statements from councillors when they have the head teacher present who wants to improve the schooling, the school experience for their children. There is nothing untoward or anti-environmental about GS3 pitches. I used to be a football referee myself. We have them throughout the borough. It allows plenty of exercise for the school children. We need to vote for this application to show our support for sports, for schools, and for our head teachers and teachers, and ignore statements by Mr. Dean that the school is out to make money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, Councillor Christie, and then Councillor Dean again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm all in favour of improving school sports facilities, and I like the idea that can be multi-use for the 2020 and beyond. That is I don't think when we talk about that as a grass pitch, you don't get many flowers, birds, or anything else on those grass pitches. They don't come there because they're used too often. So that is a bit of a red herring. I do, however, though, I sat in this chamber many, many years ago, along with Councillor Russell Bacon and Councillor Shears, and we fought against a planning application that wanted high fencing and high floodlighting. Since then, of course, I mean, we won the argument because the application was refused. However, I still find it hard to understand why the fencing is actually 5 meters high and the floodlights can go up to 15 meters. I find that, although I find the application to do this a very good one to improve the school and to pursue the facilities, I find it hard to believe that going all that way up is actually totally necessary.
Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Chair. Very much in support of the application. I also just wanted to comment on, we sometimes hear about applications that are in conservation areas. Some of the arguments against those applications seem to be under the illusion that just because an area is within a conservation area, nothing must ever be built, or that all development is bad development. I think quite clearly this is a excellent application for what will be an excellent facility on the site of a school, who are clearly acting first and foremost in the best interests of their children. So these sort of aspersions that Councillor Dean is casting, I think, aren't really appropriate for this committee. And I think the application makes significant efforts to make itself suitable for a conservation area. The fencing has been designed to fit in well within the area. It's 5 meters of height, and that fits in with the surrounding buildings, and the lights, which will retract to being hidden behind the fence, will therefore not be an issue anytime other than when the pitch is in use in the dark. So, it seems that they've made significant efforts to fit within and enhance the conservation area that it will be sited in. So I'll be supporting the application.
Thank you. Councillor Dean.
Well, the applicant obviously can't speak, but if this is not about commerciality, so let's put in this application that it can't be used for commercial purposes after 6 p.m. at night. And just shows you're not telling the truth. You used the word fact. You told me this is not about commerciality. You are speaking with 2 tongues. If this is not about commerciality, let's close it off at 6 p.m. because I know it is. So what I'm telling is the fact. If the school is, this is about the kids, then let's say no commercial ventures after 6 p.m. at night. I know this won't get through because I know exactly why this is happening. The environment has been desecrated in this area, and this disgrace that I hear tonight about this is about the sports. They've been playing sports on there for 128 years. Most of us have played on that sporting area, no problems with the grounds. So all of a sudden, floodlights, 9 p.m, it's all about money. And it's a disgrace that Labour councillors can't see through that.
Yeah, Councillor Amenity.
Withdraw the term Labour.
Well, let's see how you vote.
I'd just like to make a comment on this application myself. It seems to me that council policy is that when there's a development in a conservation area, that development should enhance or preserve the conservation area. Now, the site is in a conservation area and it's surrounded by Grade 2 listing buildings, including a 2-star listed church. So I'm very concerned about this because I can't see that floodlights at 9 p.m. enhance the conservation area at all. I think having said that, I shall now move to the vote. So the recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to no objection from Thames Water and subject to conditions as set out on page 69 of the pack. May I see all those in favour? That's 6. All those against? That's 2. And there's no non-voting. So the recommendation is approved and permission is granted to Wimbledon College for their sports field. Thank you. We now move on to item 9 on your original agenda. This is the Kingston Road infill development. This is linked to another application, application 10, which is effectively an additional 5 units on top of the infill development. So Mr. Liscombe, I think you're presenting on this, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Chair.
One moment, please, Mr. Liscombe. Sorry, Councillor Christie.
So are we taking both of them together or are they done separately?
No, we're taking them separately. It is quite possible that people will speak for 3 minutes on number 8 and then in due course speak for 3 minutes on number 9. There'll be the same people making very similar points. That is possible. We are taking them separately. Mr. Liscombe.
Thank you, Chair. I will just share my screen to talk you through the plans. I'm afraid that due to a technical error with the PDFs, I can't get it into slideshow mode, but all the information is here and I will scroll down through the plans to show members the proposals. As the Chair has mentioned, there are 2 schemes here, one for a infill extension to the rear to provide 1 flat, and another one for that infill extension in addition to a roof extension above. This current application is for the infill extension, and the next application will include the rooftop extension as well. So if I take you through the plans now, here is the site, southern side of Kingston Road, within the Wimbledon Chase neighbourhood parade and 60 metres away from Wimbledon Chase train station. The building is currently 4 stories with commercial at ground floor. And here you can see the frontage of the building with a setback top floor. The building was originally constructed in 1934. You can see it has an Art Deco character, and some of the detailing you'll see in a moment will show that. Vehicular access to the site is via this undercroft, and that provides access to some limited parking. And there's also the Sunshine Recovery Cafe situated to the rear, which is in here. So you can see that residential properties are to the south, and there are also residential flats above the commercial units here adjacent to the site. Here is the single-story co-op building, so nothing on top of that at the moment. If I take you through some of the photos, here you can see the building. This is a view from the rear. This is a view from the front, showing some of the Art Deco detailing that that forms both vertical and some horizontal banding across the building. This is the surrounding area, so you can see the application building here, other buildings within the immediate street scene. Here is a view from the rear. This section here is actually where the infilled flat is proposed to be, but we'll come on to that in just a moment as well. So the rear infill, taking you through the plans, this is the existing ground floor. Now, the only thing that would be changing here is the layout of cycle storage and bin storage, which I'll come on to shortly. Again, existing ground floor. This shows the area in which the infill extension would be. So these are still the existing plans, but they're just marked up to make it clear where the extension would be. So it's across 3 floors, as you can see, 1, 2, 3. One of them would be a mezzanine floor because part of the building, the second floor, as you can see here, is already much higher than the other floors. So there would be a mezzanine tucked in there is the plan. Here you can see the actual floor plans. So this is the 3rd floor. Sorry, these have come out in slightly the wrong order, but bedrooms at the top. In terms of the actual form of the extension, you can see it largely follows on from existing fenestration, but it would effectively square off that corner. Here is the mezzanine floor with a void here and a bedroom space here. And at the on the 2nd floor, we have the main living space with a balcony 1.5 meters depth to the rear. And there you can see the balcony projecting here. In terms of the changes to the ground floor, the bin store and cycle store would be reconfigured to allow for additional storage capacity. This would also, as a benefit of the development, allow for the 3 units here, which have been approved under the prior approval process rather than by way of a planning application. This would improve the refuse collection and storage facilities they have, because at the moment they have to drag it round out onto the street, is my understanding. Servicing would be carried out from the street as it is with the existing building. You will note the modification sheet that doesn't introduce any new information. It simply shows members where the area to be extended would be located. So to clarify, this infill extension would have to be carried out in order for the rooftop extension above to be carried out, but it is being considered as a standalone element. When we move on to the next proposal, you'll see that it's both the infill and the rooftop extension. However, this is a standalone proposal at the moment. In terms of key issues, design and visual impact, it would square off the existing building, and the visual impact would be fairly limited. We'll talk more about visual impact for the rooftop scheme because it has a greater impact on the street scene. In terms of neighbouring amenity, the separation distances to the boundary is around 23 meters and 30 plus meters to neighbouring windows. So officers don't feel that there's any basis to resist the application on overlooking. Similarly, in terms of daylight and sunlight, the main bulk of the building already exists. This would be filling in a corner. It stands to the north of the residential properties to the south, and so it's going to have limited impact in terms of overshadowing. And again, that separation distance would limit that impact. Members will note that there are balconies proposed, which would oversell windows below. There would be some, albeit limited, impact from these balconies. However, officers conclude that this would not be an unusual situation in a flatted development. However, from the point of view of the resident below, They don't have one there at the moment, so I can fully appreciate that objection. But in planning terms, that's not something we feel we can raise objection on. A lot of the objections have raised concerns, and this goes for the next application as well, about the degree of disturbance throughout the construction process. Officers note this and have carefully considered that and have sympathy with the existing residents. Inevitably, there would be some degree of disturbance, no matter how much minimised. Members will note the raft of safeguarding conditions that we've recommended, including requirement for submission of details of construction vehicle parking, washdown facilities, a delivery and servicing plan, a demolition and construction logistics plan, and a demolition and construction environmental management plan, which would deal with things like noise and dust. Given those conditions, we don't feel that there is a basis to refuse the application based on neighbouring amenity. Moving on to standard of accommodation, the proposed flat would exceed the relevant internal floor standards. It would be single aspect, but then every flat in this building currently is single aspect, and this is the only way that this bit could be built out. Notwithstanding that, it is single aspect to the south with very large windows, so the overall level of light is unlikely to be a problem. There is cycle parking provided in line with the London plan, and there would be a Section 106 agreement to restrict the issuing of parking permits. Issues of sustainability, air quality and site drainage are considered to be acceptable. You'll note that there is a breakdown of the issues raised by objectors and a response to that at the end of the report. The officer conclusion is that the proposal would be acceptable, and therefore the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. We have two objectors wishing to speak on this application. Dr. Adam Green, are you here? No. Mr. Andy McLaughlin, are you here? Okay. Neither of those gentlemen.
I believe they are here, Chair. One moment.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello, can you hear me?
Dr. Green, yes, we can hear you. Would you like to speak for 3 minutes?
Yes, please. Would that be okay?
Yes, it will. Please start now.
Fantastic. So many thanks to Merton Council and the Planning Application Committee for the opportunity to discuss this planning application. As I'll just start by saying we weren't aware that these will be separate planning applications for the infill and the roof, but would like to mention our objection to both plans, and I will discuss both plans in my 3 minutes. We believe—
Dr. Green, you can spend 3 minutes discussing this infill application and then spend another 3 minutes when we consider the application with the additional 5 units.
I understand that the talk I've prepared will cover both nonetheless, so the total 6 minutes will cover both applications.
Okay, thank you.
All right, to continue. So the residents overwhelmingly agree that this presents an unnecessary overdevelopment and overpopulation of the current site. We are concerned it will exacerbate existing concerns regarding noise pollution and the inadequate provision of communal facilities for the building, whilst also providing new worries surrounding privacy and the visual amenity of the building, particularly with the additional floor. I'd like to mention current concerns with the building with the developers at the moment. We are aware of at least one ongoing legal claim from residents against the developers Leos regarding the poor electrical work and flooring work on the top floor of the building, and believe that this should be addressed before any further building work is performed. We are also in the process of making complaints with Andrew Pickup and Merton Council regarding noise pollution. It transpires the original building has not been adequately soundproofed to prevent sound pollution from the ground floor commercial buildings, namely one of the gyms, and multiple complaints have been made on this regard, and again, ought to be resolved before any further work is done on the site. Now, regarding the extension itself and the concerns that we have, I'd like to talk a bit about light and view. Again, this will be more apparent for the next application for the higher floor, but the balcony impact analysis provided by the developer, which I'm sure you'll see later, will demonstrate that summer sunlight is significantly compromised for the habitable rooms in the rear flats. One of the other main concerns shared by residents was the issue of privacy. As we can see, even with the infill, there's a balcony at the rear of the flat, which will directly overlook the skylights for the ground floor units as seen in the schematic. In contrast to what Tim is saying, from where I live at the rear of the building, I can just about peek into the kitchen via the skylight. There is definitely someone living in there. We'd also like to add the fact that the Sunshine Recovery Cafe is at the rear to the building. Any building work that goes on is likely to disrupt the patients using that service, affecting their confidentiality and possibly their ability to access the service for regards to their mental health. One other key amenity in the building, which we also believe to be inadequate, is the issue of the lift. We've done our research of the lift in the building, and there's currently no plans to improve that particular facility. The lift in question is designed for use in nursing homes and for people who are elderly and disabled. It's prone to malfunction, and adding further residents to this building will serve only to add more pressure to an already overstretched resource. My other resident, yeah, will cover some of the other issues. So I never got my 1 minute warning. So, but I will yield.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Mr. McLaughlin, would you like to speak for 3 minutes now?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, let me just, sorry, we are sitting in the same room, so I've got a bit of feedback there. Yeah, I'm ready to start if you are.
Please start.
Okay, yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time this evening. Just continuing on with what Adam was saying, one of the key issues here is bin storage. So there is currently an issue with the amount of bin storage that's provided on site, and it's already raised with the council in Ndudi Anugi, who, to quote, has said, "It's already a struggle attending to waste management needs at this location with existing properties." So it's clear that whichever formula they're using is insufficient for the current flats. And so adding further flats to this burden, and granted that this takes into consideration the top floor extension as well as this infill, is proven to be insufficient. This will only exacerbate the problem. The issue of parking, Tim did mention that there will be a restriction on the parking permits for this block. However, it's clearly obvious that most of the residents in this building do have cars, and we do park cars. I'll throw my hand up to that in the neighbouring area. Adding further residents to this block will only increase the problem of off-street parking that we have in the surrounding area. So again, I feel adding further residents will further exacerbate that problem. I'd also like to spend a moment on how the current developer seems resistant to address some of the issues that we've raised as residents. There was a visit that Leo's attended towards the end of July, where one of the members of staff was quite literally attempting to bribe us out of withdrawing our comments on this application. And one such resident received an anti-Semitic comment to say, "You're Jewish, you're rich, you can buy the top floor," which I think is a brazen disregard from the developer to try and address comments. And so we do have some serious concerns about whether any of the comments or the conditions that Tim may propose in his report will actually be met. And lastly, and I think this point is probably one for greater discussion, especially with the top floor flat, we feel as a group of residents that we have been missold these flats. This is a very new development, and we bought this development on the confidence that there would not be a stage 2 of this development. And so there is a moral and potentially a legal issue here where these flats have been missold, and all of these flats were sold, and then the planning application went in, which meant that this application or the next application did not show up in our solicitor's searches. So I think the council are a danger here of setting a precedence that there could undermine trust in people willing to buy new build houses in this borough, as you can buy a new build house and no greater than a year on from buying your house do you have to be subject to sustained disruption and further construction works and devaluing of your property. So on balance, I think it's a detriment to the residents here that far outweighs any benefit by these few additional flats. So please do reject this planning application as well as the next one, which we will discuss in further detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. The applicant now has 6 minutes to respond. Is Mr. Ben Coleman here?
Yes, hello.
Hello. Are you going to use up all 6 minutes? Are you sharing it with your colleagues?
I will be sharing it with 2 colleagues. So I'll be starting now. And exactly as the previous speakers, I'll be doing my speech. We were under the impression that we'd be speaking for one application, for both applications in one speech. So I'll be doing my speech now for both. So this applies for both applications.
Okay, but you still only have 6 minutes at this
Sure.
stage, and
That's fine.
over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors. I'm Ben Coleman, Development Director of Leo's, who are the applicant for the application that is before you tonight. We're a London-based developer focused on delivering high-quality new homes for residents. We worked really closely with your placemaking and case officers and waste team to ensure that the design addressed issues of architecture, residents' daylight, designs, to improve the usability of the cycle and waste storage. So we made big changes from the original application and worked with your team. The result is an all-round improvement to the building with both internally and externally. The new homes will comply with all relevant standards in terms of space and amenity and overall quality. Our design team ended up fully updating the facade and with the placemaking officer to achieve a distinctly Art Deco style. This is actually for the next application. So originally it was very subtle, and then we were encouraged to bring in the Art Deco style, which the existing building has. And actually that doesn't apply to the rear of the building for the infill, which is just very subtle and fits in with the existing facade. The result is an all-round improvement to the building, both internally and externally. The new homes will comply with relevant standards in terms of space and amenity, as I mentioned. Equally, we spend lots of time talking about waste and cycle storage, as I mentioned before. So this is an area that I know people in the building have had issues, and we are intent on making this much better. Essentially, the compliance, the way it's set up now is fully compliant, but it will work better when the work is complete. We consider that these 2 applications here tonight are sound on all planning grounds, and we are very pleased that your officers and statutory consultants agree. We aim to deliver high quality homes, and it is our intention to use support of local labour and suppliers wherever possible. As your officers report acknowledges, the construction and work impact cannot reasonably amount to the reason for refusal, and we are happy to accept extensive safeguarding conditions from the council should you accept our application tonight. Building regulations will ensure that residents and neighbours' amenity is preserved and enhanced, and we are committed to continual engagement with residents throughout the construction process. I'm pleased to say that we've got a couple of existing residents here to speak with us tonight in support of the proposal. To conclude, in front of you today are 2 policy compliant applications that have little impact on existing residents, neighbours, local residents and businesses. The scheme will deliver 5 new homes, which, although relatively modest in number, are policy compliant and fit with your policies and the London plan. Both of them acknowledge that schemes such as these are important for London to deliver more homes, more houses that it needs. We hope that you will allow our team to make this investment in your local area by providing 5 new quality homes. Thank you. I'll hand over to Alex.
Yes, hello to the chair and hello to the rest of the meeting. My name's Alex, I live in the building. I've been in the building for about 6 months now. I just want to refer to the anti-Semitic comment that I heard earlier. I do find that rather strange, considering the developer is Jewish. So that for me was a bizarre comment. So I didn't really get that. I just want to say that the building itself, I believe it looks fantastic. and I'm personally really proud to live there. I look around each day when I sit inside, and I think of the style and how sleek the building is, and like I said, feel really proud to live there. I think with the complaints that I'm hearing, I mean it can only add value to the building. I mean the design itself would be improved, and again add to that kind of sleek Art Deco that the building suits. I definitely support the extension. When I was trying to move to the area, I felt there was a real lack of property, and this does give people an opportunity to move here. So, you know, adding homes, I don't see why there's a problem now. I think, you know, downstairs in the F45 gym as well. I mean, my neighbours I regularly speak to, they absolutely use it, and everyone I speak to really enjoys the services offered there. So I wasn't quite sure there of that kind of disagreement there, but like I said, really happy, and myself really want to kind of stay in a building where I see growth and potential, and I would love to be a part of that, and I'm absolutely supporting this proposal.
Thank you very much. Is Samantha going to speak now?
Hi, yes, this is Samantha. Thank you for letting me speak. I also live in the building, and I heard about the planning and really wanted to give my views. I absolutely love the design of the building, and thankfully I haven't had any issues at all. And really, it would just be great to have more. It's a really lovely community, and really there are a few places like it available. You know, I have a lot of friends interested, and they say really there isn't anywhere similar to it, and so they're really keen for it to be approved. I'm really keen for it to be approved. You know, I use the facilities a lot, and just, you know, being in the community and being in the building has made myself, and I've seen many other neighbours really happy. So fingers crossed it can be done, and I'm also fully supporting it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Liscombe, perhaps you'd like to give your further thoughts on what has been said. I think it would help the committee if at this stage you just limited your further comments to the infill application rather than both applications, if you could.
Yes, thank you, Chair. There's not an awful lot to come back on there. I do note the comments from the objectors about some existing issues in the building. They'd mentioned noise insulation, the lift. Whilst I hear where they're coming from, these are existing matters which couldn't reasonably be used to say that no further development can happen on site until these issues are resolved to their resident satisfaction. The application has to be assessed on its merits. There are other areas of legislation that deal with lift access should the lift fail or not be suitable. And indeed, there are other areas of legislation, such as Andrew picked up in the environmental health team, so environmental health legislation, which will deal with noise between the ground floor gym and the first floor properties, which obviously don't feature in this application. It's part of the existing building several floors below. In terms of waste management, we do have a comment directly from the waste management section. So that is Ndudi. They have looked at this and they are happy with the arrangements which are proposed. I understand that historically there have been some issues with collections from this property, but the current situation from our consultee is that they are satisfied with the arrangements. In terms of displacement parking, the application is subject to a legal agreement, so people wouldn't be able to park in any area in the surroundings that's part of the CPZ. As with any application for new development in a CPZ, there is a chance that someone could park their car in a nearby street. Whether that's something that someone's going to do on a permanent basis, live in a building that's clearly not in the street where they park their car, is questionable. But we've indicated in the report that there are measures to the council available should they feel that parking in surrounding roads becomes excessive, as would be the introduction of a CPZ in any case. But to try and refuse the application based on displacement parking when it's in a CPZ and subject to a legal agreement could leave the council on rather thin ice. In terms of really a non-planning matter, but in terms of being missold the units, I'm afraid it's simply not something that we can consider under the planning process. We have to assess the application on its merits in front of us. It might be that that's another matter for another legal avenue, but it's certainly not something that can feature in the planning decision. In terms of a precedence, whilst each site is dealt with on its individual merits, so there's very rarely a direct precedence in planning terms, I would just say that we are likely to see more rooftop additions around the borough, bearing in mind the fact that the government has recently introduced a form of prior approval application. So you can see that the government's intention is to encourage rooftop developments as a means to meeting housing need. You'll see at the beginning of the report, this is not within the requirements of that prior approval because it already has a top floor added to that original building. So this requires planning permission. Other than that, I've nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. We now move on to questions from the committee. Councillor Allen-Britis.
Yes, this is on the infill first, Chair. Can Tim just comment on and say why there are so many conditions, 1 to 16? I'm very impressed by these conditions, but just the reasoning and the and how they would improve the situation. 16 conditions, very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just scrolling through my agenda to get to those so I can talk through them. I won't be a moment. It's just taken a moment to catch up. Well, I'll try and go through those. We have a number of standard conditions. So the standard time limit, approved plans, external materials to be approved to ensure they match. Implementation of the refuse and recycling program. No use of any flat roofs created other than areas shown as terracing. Details of an external lighting scheme. Now, this was going to be no external lighting, but through discussions with the agent, they've indicated that they might want to do external lighting and or at least have the option to do that. That would be assessed by officers when it came in. Implementation of the cycle parking. Now, the next conditions relate to details for the actual construction process itself. So as I mentioned before, construction vehicles, washdown facilities, delivery and servicing plan, and a demolition and construction logistics plan, which will cover matters such as hours of operation, parking of vehicles, loading, unloading of plant and materials, security hoarding, reducing noise and vibration. So a number of factors which will be quite important in how the development is carried out. We also have conditions for sustainability to ensure that the proposal meets the relevant London Plan targets for carbon dioxide and water usage. There is a noise survey that's been submitted, so one of the conditions requires that the development be in accordance with that. Another condition requires an absolute limit on noise levels from any fixed plant that's used in the process, and also non-road mobile machinery. For that to meet the London Mayor's requirements in control of dust and emissions. The other conditions are a demolition and construction environmental management plan. That includes a air quality management plan, and that's simply to reduce dust and other emissions at the site preparation and development stage. The final condition is for a scheme of surface and foul water drainage, which is required for all new residential units, and that will simply be a method of showing how the scheme has introduced or incorporated any methods to slow down the runoff of water from the site, which is ultimately what the SUDS schemes are about. But hopefully that sets out a reasonable framework for why we consider those conditions are all necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. Are there any other questions? Councillor Christie.
Thank you, Chair. It's a new one for me. And I heard during one of the objectors' comments that they felt either they or a neighbour had been subjected to an anti-Semitic remark. Now, I appreciate it might be difficult to consider that in the process of determining this planning application. But I suppose my question is that I'd like to know if officers, if an allegation is made of such behaviour, how officers would approach that and ensure that any sort of suggestion of anti-Semitic behaviour by an applicant to this council is handled, and what advice is given to the person who made it.
Thank you, Councillor Christie. I think any allegation of anti-Semitic behaviour or verbal abuse needs to be investigated by the appropriate authorities and a complaint made to them. It's not really a matter that we can consider or really even discuss in the planning application committee. So I think we will have to leave that for others to intervene.
I appreciate that. I hope the gentleman that made that comment is able to make his complaint to the appropriate authorities.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Councillor Christie. Any other questions? Perhaps then we shall move to comments. Any comments, colleagues? Councillor Alambritis.
Yes, this is something that I would support. As we say constantly at this planning applications committee, Merton is an infill borough. It's got small plots there, here and there, and we need to support such applications. I'm really interested that 2 residents who live in the block are also very supportive. I know we've heard from other residents who are not so supportive, but it's highly unusual for residents to rise above the parapet and actually support an application within a certain block where there are opponents as well. So yeah, I'm all for this. I'll be voting for this. I'll be voting for the concomitant 5 flats at the next application that are linked in. Thank you.
Councillor Southgate.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is in my ward, and one in which I've taken quite a lot of interest. And I do feel that the block here, originally built 1934, has been greatly improved with the it's more than facelift really, but the bringing out the Art Deco features is a enhancement for the public realm, and we're all pleased with that actually. I have listened to the issues raised by Dr. Green and Mr. McLaughlin. I do have sympathy. I don't know whether other members remember when we listened to the leaseholders, or tenants perhaps, of the ludicrously named Madison Heights near South Wimbledon station, of all the trials and tribulations that they were endured. And if you put a lot of money into raising the deposit to buy into a block like this, and you then find you've got problems with noise or legal issues, it is a really rather distressing. But mostly those fall outside the realm of planning, don't they? And I do hope they can be resolved. I mean, it's not good publicity for the developers to have ongoing issues like that being broadcast. But in terms of the planning aspect of this particular development, it is after all just one flat. I see no reason to to object to it actually.
Thank you, Councillor Southgate. I think I shall now move this to the vote. The recommendation is to grant permission subject to Section 106 agreement and various conditions outlined in the report back. All those in favour? That's 6. All those against? Not voting? 2. So the recommendation is approved. Planning permission is granted subject to Section 106 and conditions. Thank you very much. We now move on to that is a good idea because we've been here for almost 3 hours. So yes, let's have a 10-minute break. Thank you, Councillor Southgate.